Professor Karn back with you to continue our accounting cycle illustration. In this video we will continue our problem and go over step 3, which is to post all transactions from step 2 to the general ledger T accounts. Okay, as you can see here, I still have our completed document from before where we had our journal entries, and you can see them here. We've already filled those out in the previous video, so let's continue on now and actually post them. The first thing we need to do, however, is we have to open a T account for each of the accounts. And what we're going to do here is I'll go through and kind of go through a couple examples of how to do this, and then I'll pause the video and go ahead and complete this to save a bit of time and kind of update you with what I did. So we try to list them in order from using assets, liabilities, and equity to the best that we can. So let's go ahead here, and you can see our T accounts. I've got them set up here already. Obviously, again, debit's always on the left and credit's on the right. So notice I put a statement up here where the plus sign appears is where the balance must be. So what we want to do is not only do we want to put the account name up here, we also want to indicate does it have a debit or a credit balance by putting the plus and the minus in the appropriate areas. Okay, so let's go ahead and list a couple of these here. So we'll go ahead and do our cash first. And remember, that's an asset, so that would be debit plus and credit minus. So we'll go ahead and indicate these things like this. Then we'll just work our way across. Then we can do accounts receivable. We're only going to do accounts that we used in the first and second steps. Again, an asset, so accounts receivable will have a debit balance, debit plus, credit minus. Continuing on, we'll go to office supplies. Still an asset, so debit plus and credit minus. Then we had prepaid insurance. And again, debit plus and credit minus. Then we get to equipment. Still asset, so debit plus, credit minus. Okay, then we get to land. Still an asset, so we have debit plus and credit minus. All right, then we get to our liabilities here, and we have accounts payable, so we'll go ahead and put that in there. And remember, accounts payable is a liability, so it will be a credit balance, so that means debit minus and credit plus. Then we go to notes payable. And again, another liability, so debit minus and credit plus. Okay, I think that you get the drift here, what we're doing. So I'll go ahead and pause the video here. And then come back to you with all the T accounts set up ready to post the journal entries. Okay, so we're back now, and I finished up all of the T account preparation here, setting up the rest of the accounts. So we have unearned revenue, which is a liability with a credit balance. Capital has a credit balance. Withdrawals, a debit balance. Revenue, a credit balance. And all the expenses, advertising, utilities, and salaries, and rent all have a debit balance. So now that we've set everything up, the thing that I want to stress to you is that you've done the hard work. And basically, you can see in the notes area here what I have typed up for you is that really to post any journal entry, just copy it exactly. Do exactly what it tells you to do. There's nothing new here except the format. What we're trying to do is we're going to be able to calculate the balances of each account individually. We want to know how much money we have in our cash account, what our current balance of our accounts receivable is, so forth and so on. So let's go back to our journal and see how this works. So we click back on this here and we go back to the first one here. Okay, so the very first entry that we had, notice we're going to do exactly what it tells us to do. We're going to debit $55,000 to cash. Okay, so let's go do that. So we're going to debit $55,000 to cash. Okay, so let's make these a little bit bigger here so we can see them. That's better. All right, and then notice that, so we put that there. So obviously right now this makes sense because our current balance after this one transaction for cash is going to be $55,000. And obviously we have to then credit $55,000 to the capital account. All right, so let's come down here. We'll do $55,000 there to the credit. And we'll make these a little bit larger for us as well. Okay. And we'll do that there. Okay, so now that we've got that set up, notice that we've posted our very first journal entry to the general ledger T accounts. So notice that both cash, in this case, has a proper balance of $55,000 and capital has a $55,000 balance. All right, now let's go to the second journal entry. Again, doing exactly what it's telling us to do. We have to debit $9,000 to equipment. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll debit $9,000 to the equipment account. And notice then what we have to do here is we have to credit $9,000 to the cash account. Okay, so let's see how this works. So $9,000 goes in the credit column of the cash account. Now, here's what we have to remember. Notice, what do we always say the golden rule is? Wherever the plus sign appears is where the balance must be. So remember, we're going to debit cash a bunch of times. We're also going to credit cash a bunch of times. But at the end of the day, to find out the balance, I always add up the plus sign side, subtract out the side with the minus sign, and the balance must always be on the plus side. So in this case, if you thought about it right now, obviously you could see that $55,000 minus $9,000, technically we have a current balance of $46,000 in cash on the debit side, which would be correct as far as it having a proper debit balance. Now, let's just say that we made a mistake. In the first journal entry, we accidentally did something like this. Let's say that we had put this here. Well, we should know right away that that's not possible. The book is not going to trick you. I'm not going to trick you. You will never have a balance that ends up with the higher number on the negative side. So don't ever think that that's going to be the case. That would mean that the account had an abnormal balance, and we're not going to do that to you here as you're learning the basics. All right, so let's put this back, 55,000 and 9,000. All right, so now that we've done that, so you can see that we can go to the next one. We'll go and do the third one here. Prepaid insurance, we have to debit that for $1,500. So debit $1,500 to prepaid insurance. Again, I'm not doing anything different than the journal entry is telling me to do. So $1,500 goes there. And again, I have to then credit $1,500 to cash. So I'll put that over here. So $1,500 goes to cash. Oh, as a credit. So you can see what we're doing here. We're just copying it directly from the journal into the general ledger T accounts. We'll do one more, and then I'll pause it and finish it out for you to save you some time. debit $16,000 to land, so we'll debit that. So land's down here, $16,000 to land, and we have to credit $16,000 to cash. So here we go, $16,000 to cash. Again, nothing here that is different than what we're doing from the journal to the ledger. All right, I'll pause it here and go ahead and finish this out. If you want to practice and do this on your own and then see how you do when I come back, hopefully you've got this all figured out. All right, I'm back with you now. As you can see, what I did was I finished posting all of the journal entries that we had there, and then what I've done is if there was only one particular posting for an account, obviously that's the current balance, and notice that that is the case for all but two of our accounts, cash and accounts payable. So you can see that, notice that everywhere there's an orange balance is where the plus sign is. There is nothing here that is showing anywhere that doesn't have an orange box that has a plus sign in the appropriate area. Okay, so how do we find the balance of cash? Obviously, all we have to do is we have to add up all of these numbers and subtract out all of these numbers to get the current debit balance of cash. So if we do that, we add the 55,000 plus the 12,000 plus the 14,000 plus the 1,400. We subtract out the 9,000, the 1,500, the 16,000, the 1,700, the 300, the 5,100, and the 4,000, and we get a debit balance of 44,800 when you do that. All right, and then you can see here, what do we get for, we'll just do a simple calculation. You could have done it this way as well in Excel. So we can add up the 2,000 and the 180, and we subtract out the 300. Notice here we get $1,880 as the final credit balance of accounts payable. So now we have a balance for each of our accounts. Again, all we did was post them, the journal entries from steps 1 and 2 that we did here, the previous video, over to the T accounts here. So the next video we'll go ahead and be able to prepare a trial balance. So stay tuned and we'll be right back to you for that.